So we are obviously in uncharted territory when it comes to the success of the Nintendo Switch, as it is actually set to outsell the Wii this year, which was previously up to this point Nintendo's most successful console of all time. So we can now say the Switch will be Nintendo's best, most successful console ever. And with that, we have some really big information that came out of Nintendo's recent investor meetings, and we got to talk about them today. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now guys, today we're talking about Nintendo and their recent investor meetings and what reports have come out of those, because you've probably seen them in headlines a lot recently, and if you guys don't know, Nintendo obviously is a publicly traded company, and they have to hold annual stockholder meetings and even quarterly meetings to basically share profits, revenue streams, growth, year-over-year projections, and things like that. And we had a couple interesting articles come out of that recently, so I want to share with you guys first the challenges that Nintendo might face, as they are obviously tracking to have another record year, and they're projecting their best year ever to be in 2021 and into 2022, but they are suggesting that they are going to have potentially significant hurdles when it comes to delivering those numbers because of the global chip shortage. And I want to talk about how that plays into potential production issues with things like the Switch Pro or Switch Revision, which we are absolutely expecting to happen either at the end of this year, or of course it could slide into 2022. So first, let's read through the details of this first article talking about what kind of potential issues Nintendo may face, and if we think that this may actually impact Switch production and Switch Pro production. Nintendo has confirmed that the global shortage of semiconductors is hampering its Switch production efforts. The company said on Thursday that it had shipped 28.83 million Switch units in its last fiscal year, and it expects to ship 25.50 million in the current one ending in March 31st of 2022, which would see the system overtake the Wii to become Nintendo's best-selling home console to date. However, during a press conference following the publication of its latest earnings results, Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa admitted that the company is unable to make as many consoles as it would like, and that there's an increased sense of uncertainty about its production capabilities. Due to the global shortage of semiconductor materials, we are not able to produce all of the products we want to, he said via Neki paywall. We are doing everything we can, but there is an increasing sense of uncertainty about production plans. Our earnings forecast is based on the assumption that we will be able to secure parts and materials, and if the situation changes, we would respond by revising it. Furukawa said in mid-April that Nintendo had been able to secure enough semiconductors for immediate Switch production, but would not rule out the possibility of hardware shortages this year in the face of continued strong demand. So there's really one big takeaway from this article for me, and it's the fact that obviously Nintendo is confident that if they can secure these semiconductor components, that they can absolutely deliver the sales numbers, but it is a fluid situation, and that is what is kind of scary in the terms of what can we expect to actually be announced this year and released, and what can we be expecting to see pushed back due to actual real world things that are out of Nintendo's control, like this chip shortage right now. So if the plans are for 2021 to be the year of the Switch Pro, and they obviously can't secure the parts, well then we might have to see that move to a Q1 or Q2 of 2022, and I do hope that that does not happen, because I think the Switch is clearly showing its age at this point, as it's over 4 years now on the market, and I do absolutely believe the production reports that we're seeing from major publications now, such as Bloomberg and Neki. I mean, there's the big guys are actually saying that Nintendo is absolutely working on this next version of the Switch, whatever it is. So I think the plan is to launch it at holiday season, but then you have to ask that question: if this semiconductor shortage is as bad as it is looking like, that Nintendo's president actually can't even say for sure that they're going to be able to secure their forecast because of these components, there's obviously a lot of room for movement here. So this could absolutely affect the release of Breath of the Wild 2, as I do believe that's going to launch alongside the Switch Pro. It doesn't have to, but I think Nintendo wants it to, if at all possible, because that is a console mover. Now You could also argue that Pokemon Legends Arceus is going to be a console mover, as I do believe that that one is another big one. But I think if Nintendo had it their way in their perfect world, I think that we would see the Switch revision come out at the end of 2021, launched alongside Breath of the Wild 2, and then people who maybe aren't the biggest Zelda fans but are huge Pokemon fans would then pick up and upgrade to a Switch revision next year. And you guys have to keep in mind, for them to forecast something like 25 million units, as we obviously saw a huge influx of additional Switch sales last year, and just like every home computer device did because of the real world pandemic and actually needing to stay at home and entertain yourself more at home, we saw like huge influxes of anything that can entertain people. So for them to basically forecast roughly the same numbers as they did as their all-time high in a pandemic for this upcoming year is huge, and I think part of that is their plan to announce the Switch Pro at the end of this year and then sell that through the beginning of March 2022, which would obviously restart their next fiscal year. But guys, I want to know your thoughts on that topic, because I'm really curious to see what the general pulse of Nintendo fans is right now, and if you think that we're going to see the Switch Pro at the end of 2021 or Breath of the Wild 2, or if you think that this chip shortage is way worse than maybe even what Furukawa is actually presenting it as, and that we may even be further out for any kind of talks on a Switch revision. So make sure you leave me your thoughts on the comments on that one down below. But then guys, the next thing we actually have to talk about is Nintendo potentially acquiring new companies as the options become available, because there is another article that came out around these investor meetings that suggests that Nintendo is ready to start purchasing out companies as it makes sense for them as a business move. And we have traditionally not seen Nintendo really operate like this for quite some time. We recently had an acquisition of Next Level Games, but before that, Nintendo hasn't even purchased anybody in I think it was over a decade or something. So guys, I want to read through the details of this article with you to basically share with where we might be looking at Nintendo when it comes to their own first party developers and them actually deciding to pull the trigger on different companies that make sense for them and their business vision. Nintendo has said that any potential acquisitions it would make would be driven by the company's need to keep pace with rapidly advancing technological innovation. President Shintaro Furukawa discussed the company's plans for its 1 trillion yen or $9.2 billion war chest during a press conference following Tuesday's publication of its full year's earnings results. We need to secure cash reserves to ensure financial stability, but if we need to respond to rapidly advancing technological innovation, we may acquire companies that possess the technology, he said via Neki paywall. Furukawa said in February that simply increasing the size of Nintendo's development teams through acquisitions would not be prudent, as it wouldn't necessarily result in a higher quality games lineup. He told Neki that the company's approach to M&A is based on whether potential targets can improve the value of the entertainment that Nintendo provides. The platform holder announced in January that it was buying Luigis Mansion 3 developer Next Level Games, its first acquisition in over a decade. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how Nintendo proceeds here, as obviously they're stating that they want to have a lot of cash flow on hand just for financial stability reasons, but they are absolutely now willing to pull the trigger on different acquisitions if it makes sense from a technology standpoint, which is really promising to see, because there's obviously a ton of rapid innovation to come in the upcoming years, and to see Nintendo now really in a financial position to actually be able to purchase companies, as we obviously have seen Nintendo have a very up and down ride when it comes to console sales, and as we discussed earlier, they are now at their all-time high with the Nintendo Switch, so it does make sense for them to start looking at purchasing maybe more developers, but it sounds like maybe more people who are creating some brand new technologies that are really kind of part of the future vision of what games will look like, and Nintendo could get in on that boat and purchase, different companies. And I would personally be curious to see if maybe this could relate to something that they might be looking at for VR down the line, as obviously that's going to be huge in the gaming space. It's going to have its own audience initially, and I think it'll grow to a fairly mainstream thing over time. It could be one of those things where it really is kind of the future, or at least close to the future of what games will look like, into the far distant, 10, 15, 20 years. So it'll be really interesting to see if Nintendo tries to acquire somebody with really impressive VR technology and maybe implement that as part of the Switch Pro, or even maybe just hold off until the entire next gen of whatever Nintendo would be offering with a, true up sequel and next gen Switch. So that remains to be seen, but I want to know what your guys' opinions are on these different articles and how successful of a year Nintendo has had, and what you think this kind of strategy from them means, because obviously we're not talking about a bunch of game announcements or anything like that today, so it's not always as exciting to go over the financial results, but it does say a lot about the position that Nintendo is in right now and how empowered they are to really pump out great games and great hardware and potentially even purchase companies. So let me know your opinions on what you think Nintendo will do now that they are in this newfound situation with the success of Nintendo Switch sales. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out on this video if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.